A pile of shame is a collection of games a person has purchased but not played. Mine is substantial. This is PILEDIVER. Botanicula is a game that doesn't invite you in. It has characters, but you're not playing as them. You don't understand their language, their history, their motivations. You see their world, but understanding isn't given. You're standing outside, looking in. Most adventure games cast the player as a protagonist or even as a villain, but in Botanicula you have a different role. You're an observer. This isn't your world, but there's a lot to learn from it. Botanicula is an adventure puzzle game featuring 5 planty things with eyes trying to save their ecosystem from a parasitic invading force. I think. There are no spoken or written words in this game, so you, the player, have to infer most of the plot and motivation from the characters' squeaks and pantomime. And that's not actually new. Developer Amanita Design did the same with their previous games, Machinarium and Samarost, but those games' characters were more human-like, and its spaces more like human spaces. The language may have been indecipherable, but the situations in those games were clear and unmistakable. Meanwhile, I felt disconnected from Botanicula's leafy characters and their alien experience. Playing the game feels less like relating to another person or taking on their experience, and more like observing alien life. This distance between the player and the characters extends to the game's mechanics, or lack thereof. In Botanicula, there are no consistent verbs. What I mean is, unlike in a Mario game where a player can become accustomed to a set of standard actions like running and jumping, every action the player takes here has no means of predicting the outcome. Sometimes, tapping on an object causes a member of the group to interact with that object. Other times, it causes the object to react on its own. Most often, tapping on a given space on the screen does nothing. This lack of consistency blocked me from feeling like I was controlling or inhabiting these characters, which is what I would be doing in any other game. Just as the characters lack the proper language to invite the player into their lives, the player lacks the direct verbs to properly inhabit these characters or this world. But where that might be frustrating in other games, Botanicula uses this distance to create an experience that's unique and special. See, in other games, I often get frustrated at a puzzle's frills or extraneous elements. If there's something charming or funny in the game space that doesn't contribute to a puzzle's solution, it can feel grating or distracting. But Botanicula is much more relaxed than that. What feels like aimless poking and prodding gives way to sights that are surprising and new. Since objectives aren't always clear, I felt alleviated of some of the pressure to solve problems. And the more I played with the game's space, the more clear my objectives became anyway. Since understanding the world is key to understanding what the game is asking of the player, all play feels valuable because it's all drawing you closer to understanding this alien space. What seems nonsensical slowly shifts into plausibility and logic. Sadly, the tail end of the experience abruptly gear shifts back into more standard adventure game structure. Some of the last areas feature shopping list style item collection, maze navigation, and item fetching puzzles. They force the player to keep an eye out for small details and for how large spaces interconnect with one another, but nothing in the prior gameplay had quite prepared me for that. The experience is still intriguing, but in its last moments, Botanicula swaps its feeling of aimless fun for more strict traditionalism. And while it doesn't abandon some of its more whimsical elements, they start to feel like speed bumps when the game ramps up in complexity. Because when the puzzles got more complex, I stopped appreciating its extraneous elements as whimsical hints at a greater world. Instead, they were frustrating surplus flourishes that distracted from the puzzles I was trying to solve. When you're locked in a maze and have to visit specific rooms and perform actions in a specific sequence, the game's joyful frills wore on me as needless distractions. For most of its life cycle, Botanicula hits at experiences unlike what other more traditional games have on offer. It's whimsical and relaxed and made me feel like an outsider looking in on something I was content to never fully understand. It loses some of that magic in its last moments, but it's still well worth the effort for any player to look in and see what they can infer.